Welcome to Remarkable Retail Podcast, Season 10, Episode 18. I'm Michael LeBlanc.
And I'm Steve Dennis.
Our very special guest on this episode is Josh Friedman, Senior Vice President of Digital eCommerce, Ulta Beauty. Steve, we're not venturing too far from your home bases of Dallas and the great state of Illinois. Josh is a veteran e-commerce digital executive at Dell, Neiman Marcus, Blue Apron. He's got all those in his resume, and now with what is one of the most interesting retailers to watch in the retail beauty space.
Well, as I allude to, Josh is not a particularly old guy, but he's a little bit of an OG in this space because, as you mentioned, he's been working in interesting areas and interesting brands for, I guess, a couple decades now. And so he brings just great perspective, whether you're interested in beauty, the beauty industry or not. I think you'll find what he has to say pretty interesting. But yeah, Ulta is got a lot going on, new CEO, lots of gyrations broadly in the beauty market and some of the partnerships and things like that. So a lot to talk about. I think people will enjoy Josh's perspective. And one of the things I was going to mention that's a little bit of a shift for us, which some people might have focused on, we still love having the founders and the CEOs on, but we've been trying to pick topics and get the right people, the most interesting, knowledgeable people to talk about them. So folks that have listened to the interview with Neil Tenzer from Tractor Supply will get a sense for that. And I think the same thing with Josh and a few people coming down the road. And I think maybe in this particular economic environment, it's even more important to help retailers think about what are those strategies that can really differentiate them, separate them out, allow them to grow relative market share in what may turn out to be a down economy. So we don't get into the macro stuff so much with Josh, but that's a little bit of the method to our madness with our guest strategy.
Now, speaking of your various stomping grounds, you were recently back in Chicago, had the opportunity to visit some retail. Where'd you go? What'd you do? What'd you see?
Well, apparently I missed the opportunity to maybe meet the new Pope, but he was pretty...
It's true, Chicago native.
He might have been in Rome by that time. But yeah, I was up visiting my kids. Both of them live in Chicago, and as longtime listeners will know, I spent a lot of time in Chicago. But we did make a little trip, and folks may see one of our famous store visit shorts shortly. But I did get into the Wayfair store. So this is the first physical store that Wayfair has opened. It's in the suburbs of Chicago in a town called Wilmette, just a little bit north of Chicago. And I would say overall liked it, didn't love it. A couple things I'll just mention quickly. One is, ironically, as one of my kids said, given that their name is Wayfair, the wayfinding is not very good. So it's a little bit of a cluttered store, a little bit hard to navigate. It is 2 levels. If anybody's been in any of the newer Nebraska furniture marts, for example, there's one here in Dallas up in a town called Frisco, kind of a similar feel, though much less furniture and much more kind of houseware. So it kind of felt a little bit like a cleaned up IKEA with some Bed Bath & Beyond kind of stuff, some Container Store kind of stuff, a lot of appliances, kitchen cabinets. I mean, a lot of the mix was really quite a bit different than I expected. I assume that is, to create the kind of traffic and frequency, but they're actually pretty light on core furniture offering. Now it's their first shot at this. They'll be opening a second store in Atlanta later this year, so we'll see what that looks like. But I was, very mixed on it. Okay. The other thing I did in Chicago, aside from spending some time with my kids, is I did pop into the Bloomingdale's store on Michigan Avenue, right downtown in Chicago, in the heart of the Gold Coast. And I'll say I continue to be impressed by the Bloomingdale's stores. They really look good. They really look differentiated. I'm not sure how, their numbers have been better than certainly the rest of Macy's, but I really feel like they're differentiating themselves pretty well, and presentation and the sales staff and all that kind of stuff, very, very good. But on the negative side, not specific to Bloomingdale's, the thing I really notice on Michigan Avenue in particular is how much empty space there is. Michigan Avenue used to be such prime real estate, and there are a very large number of empty storefronts in very prominent areas. And I think this is, we're really seeing kind of a tale of two cities, literally, in terms of the cities that have very vibrant urban retail and those that don't. So I haven't been to San Francisco actually in a few years, but it's kind of my sense of what we're seeing in San Francisco as well, where some just unbelievable, what years ago would have been considered absolutely primo real estate, like on Union Square, where the Macy's is closed, the Saks Fifth Avenue has closed, the Bloomingdale's has closed. It's really interesting to see how tough it is. And presumably, given whatever is going to happen with the economy, which we'll talk about a little bit more in a minute, that doesn't bode well for that situation or those situations improving.
A reminder that we're the official podcast of the Commerce Next Growth Show coming up in the Big Apple. Speaking of big retail markets, third week of June, we'll be hosting the Nexties Awards. And now is the time to exercise your democratic rights wherever you are. Vote for the nominee.
Before they're taken away.
Yes. Enjoy them while you can. We'll put a link in the show notes to the vote of on the Nexties, which is great awards as a comic in all seriousness, because it's your peers voting for you. So check out the nominees and go vote. All right, let's dive into the news of the week. Let's start with tariff turmoil. Well, I guess they rang the bell in the White House. So their first of 200-300 deals that they've got going on. The UK, I'm struggling though. I've been trying to find the details because it's good kind of understand how they're starting to cut deals. But I'm struggling to find any details. Did you find the details of this plan?
Well, to the extent, we'll put details in air quotes, I guess, because pretty light on details. I refer to this as a concept of a plan for a deal, because it is not an actual deal. It's kind of an agreement in principle, I suppose, with the details still to be hammered out, though some key points were shared in the White House last week. I think most people that look at this, particularly those that don't particularly trust this administration, and I think it's no surprise to anybody that I'm definitely firmly in that camp, is that this was pretty performative, but basically a publicity stunt. Certainly not a deal. The details are to come, but there were some things that were shared. For example, the 10% kind of blanket rate will remain in place with a few carve-outs, particularly around steel and automotive. The rate on auto is coming down, I guess, to the 10% rate from 35%, I think it was before.
Right.
I don't know if...
Makes that Rolls Royce more affordable, I suppose. Yeah.
Well, that was what I was going to say. I think I know we have a fair number of listeners in the UK. Nothing against the UK auto industry, but it's not exactly the Japanese or the German auto industry in terms of foreign supply. Yes, you're talking about Rolls-Royce, Aston Martin, McLaren. I guess Range Rover is a little bit more popularly priced, but I believe the UK sends under 100,000 cars to the United States. So this is not massive in terms of what it's going to mean for trade. The other interesting thing strategically is that the Trump administration has been very much about all the unfair trade deals and all these trade deficits and everything. Well, we, the U.S., actually run a trade surplus with the UK. So I'm not sure exactly what we're fixing there. But with the 10% tariff rate, some people have calculated that will result in about $5 billion more in tariff collection for the U.S. Now, that is less than 1% of the target that the Trump administration has for their entire trade policy. So long story short, or at least a little bit shorter, probably much ado about nothing, very minimal in the scheme of things. And yes, the details are TBD. The thing, of course, that is most interesting, and by the time people listen to this episode, perhaps there'll be some more information. It does look like talks in earnest are actually happening with the Chinese government. So we'll see what, if anything, happens. Just before we recorded this, Trump said he was open because he continues to negotiate with himself. China's actually said nothing. As far as we know, there's nothing on the table, but yet the Trump administration keeps responding. He says he's open to cutting the rate from 145%, which basically creates a trade embargo, because almost nothing now is coming over from China. The real action here in terms of shifting the outlook, I guess, for the impact of this is about the EU. It's about China, Canada, Mexico. I mean, a few other partners that would be way up in terms of their importance above the UK, as much as I love all our friends and all our listeners in the UK.
Well, and it's obviously a dynamic situation. Let's talk about Temu, which is super interesting. They're smart operators. They pretty much saw something, maybe not this coming, and they've stopped shipping direct from China to the U.S., with sold out things. But they did build up a big inventory domestically, right? Talk about them and Shein. I mean, we've talked about this many times on the podcast. Have they already gotten so big a lead that the erasing of the de minimis will be a speed bump more than a critical element to the failure of a business model?
Temu and Shein, I'm sure many people have seen people posting some of their shopping carts where, you're buying a $20 item and then you got $100, $200 on top of it for shipping and tariff. So we've definitely seen, we'll maybe talk in a minute about how some of these other pricing things are going to move through the system, but specifically with Temu and Shein, they absolutely have taken pricing action, and we've already seen drops in their U.S. sales. So according to one report I saw, Shein posted a 23% week-on-week sales drop in the U.S., while Temu's sales fell 17%. The shipment came after that period. Okay. But as you say, they're doing some workarounds. Not everything is coming directly from China. That would be subject to the de minimis rules. So it's an evolving situation, but I think early on we can definitely see a big drop in their shipments. We've also seen, not specific to those retailers, but China has reported an increase in total exports for the month of April. But that is because there's a big drop to the U.S., but a very sizable increase to the rest of the world. So they are cultivating relationships with other countries. So that may be an unintended negative consequence to the Trump trade policy. But, it's very early in terms of how people are shifting, and there's probably some pulling forward of demand there as well.
All right, let's talk about core retail sales. So a not unexpected, but kind of, if you're not following it, unexpected jump in April. Talk about your observations and why you think we're getting this big sales push.
Well, we got U.S. monthly sales for core retail, and they were up over 7%. So most people will know that is an unusually high number. In fact, I can't think of the last time sales jumped that much, which everybody who understands this thinks it's mostly this pull forward of demand. It also turns out that Easter was earlier this year, so that's part of the explanation. So we saw this pretty much in every category with these 5 to 9% kind of sales increases, except for furniture, which I found interesting because, of course, furniture, generally speaking, big ticket item, lots of it made overseas, particularly in China. And you might have thought that people would have jumped on pulling forward some of those purchases. But again, we know the home market is very tied up due to some other dynamic. So it'll be really interesting because as I mentioned a couple of times, we're about to get into the heart of retailer earnings. Walmart will report this Thursday, and then over the next 2 or 3 weeks, we'll get most of the major retailers. And it'll be very interesting to see. Presumably many retailers will have benefited from this pull forward in March and April. But what are they thinking about May, June, and July, when we would assume that just the movement will cause less robust sales? And then when you put on top of that tariff pricing moving through and just in general, the malaise among the consumers. So it'll be very interesting to see that commentary. Just moving ahead a little bit on some of the retailer earnings we did get a couple pieces of good news, which is always nice to see amidst a lot of negative news. Some good news. So Tapestry, the accessible luxury conglomerate, which is mostly Coach at this point, the Coach brand continues to do really well. They've had some very good new collections. They seem to be doing a really good job of growing younger customers as part of their customer base. They've really upped their marketing spending from like 3 to 4% of sales to close to 10. And this really seems to be paying off because not only was their sales growth quite strong, their profit growth was quite strong, and they are like the only company I think I've heard say this in the last several weeks, they took their profit guidance up. And this comes amidst dozens of not just retailers, but most airlines, Ford Motor Company, Kellogg cereals. I mean,
the broader group,
broader
flashing
set
yellow. There are a lot of flashing yellow.
Yeah, they've either taken their guidance down or they basically have withdrawn guidance because they're like, we don't know what's going to happen. So that is a very positive story. It also turns out that they expect, remains to be seen, of course, the impact of the broader economy and whether we tip towards a recession or not. But Coach has diversified their production away from China. So while they're still mostly in, I think, Vietnam and Indonesia, the Philippines maybe, where they are subject to some tariffs, they seem to be confident about the demand for the product and their pricing power. So they are optimistic about the near term. And then a brand that we have talked about many times and had their Neil Blumenthal, their co-founder and co-CEO, Warby Parker, delivered its first profitable quarter after 15 years in business. They have had...
Give them a little cheers for that.
Yeah, so I guess they are able to see their way to a better future. Sorry, I regretted that as soon as it started to come out of my mouth.
Well,
but in any event...
My conclusion about that is, Neil, we were trying to get Neil on the podcast for many years. We got him on the podcast, and then they turn in their first profitable quarter. I think there's a connection there. I think there's a...
really, that's the only possible explanation.
I think.
But they have had very good momentum for several quarters now, and good momentum not only on the top line, but profitability, free cash flow, a lot of underlying customer metrics, retention rates, all those kinds of good things. And so we've seen this building up, but it's nice that they have gotten to GAAP reporting of profitability. They also continue to open quite a lot of stores. They will move past the 300 store number later this year on the way to what they think could be as many as 900 stores. So congratulations to them. And if you want to check out a little bit about their strategy as well as their history, listen to the Neil Blumenthal interview from last fall.
Well, we're wrapping up the podcast with several pieces of good news. It's kind of unusual for us.
I know people are going to be what podcast are we listening to? I thought this was the Cynical Retailer podcast.
But I'm happy to do it. Now, the last piece is both good news and super interesting. Skechers kind of snuck up on the market a little bit.
Yeah, Skechers is getting acquired by a private equity firm called 3G Capital for $9 billion. So quite a large deal. This wasn't on my radar screen for probably two reasons. One is, the deal market has really ground to a halt amidst all the uncertainty. So several things that were kind of in the works have not happened. So it just seemed like an environment where a big deal is not likely to get done. But I would say particularly in the footwear space, because so much of the footwear is made in China. And just, obviously with everything going on in China, it seems like if you're trying to figure out what the future looks like, that's a pretty hard thing to pencil out. But anyway, these guys are writing a big check for what is a very big business. I think Skechers is one of these brands that is obviously well known, but you don't hear a lot about them. They kind of fly under the radar, but it's just some quick fun facts about them. First of all, they're just vast. They're $8 billion in revenue. So actually, $9 billion for an $8 billion business doesn't, at face value, sound like an enormous premium. They are the third largest footwear company in the world. They operate in 180 countries, 30 different country-specific e-commerce platforms, and 5,300 of their own stores. So they have a mix of wholesale, but 5,300 stores. Now, some of them are quite small in a lot of the international markets. There's actually a Skechers superstore about 5 minutes from where I live. So they also have some pretty good size stores considering a fairly limited focus. So good for them. But yes, quite surprising. So, I think as I step back from not only this announcement, but also what we're seeing from Tapestry and Warby Parker, and I think what we're likely to see over the next few weeks with some retailers is, even in a turbulent market, even in a market which might be starting to contract, if you've got a remarkable value proposition, if you happen to be in categories where things aren't too dire and you execute things well, it is possible to grab market share and put up some good numbers, and I don't know, maybe get some private equity firm to write you a big check. I don't know if anybody's going to be acquiring a podcast, but hey, 3G Capital, give us a call. We're always willing to talk.
It's both great advice and a great observation, actually, because both you have a resilient consumer, but you've got to have a remarkable brand. Those things have to go together. We'll see lots of examples, I'm sure, of less remarkable results coming up in the next couple of episodes. Anyway, that's the news. Let's leave it there. Let's get to our great interview with Josh Friedman from Ulta Beauty. Josh, welcome to the Remarkable Retail Podcast. How are you this afternoon?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Where are we finding you this afternoon?
Today, we are talking from Chicago, Illinois, and it's not even too cold out today. So we're enjoying a little bit of a warm weather snap here.
Oh, fantastic! Steve and I were in Chicago not too long ago. What a great city, and you've got a bit of a head cold, just to let the listeners know. So we thank you for persevering and getting on the mic with us. So
no problem. It's with my apologies.
Hey, let's start where we always do. Tell us about who you are and what you do for a living. A little bit about your personal professional journey, and as I said, what you do for a living with Ulta.
Sure. Yeah. I'm Josh. I've been here at Ulta for almost 2 years, and I get the privilege of leading our e-commerce and digital teams here at Ulta, which includes our e-commerce business, our site, our app experiences, and our digital innovation team.
And you and Steve, I think, know each other because you were posted in Dallas, right? A little ways back, right? Steve, you know Josh coming into the interview?
We've crossed paths a few times. Josh has had maybe Josh, you could just touch on some of your prior responsibilities because it's a storied career, even though you're a pretty young guy.
Yeah, sure. So I got here via several stops in Dallas and Austin. So really started my career admittedly and quickly exited the world of public accounting. But I started as a CPA. And then joined Dell, where I worked there for 12 years, including getting the privilege of running Dell.com for a few of those years. And then flipped over to retail, got the chance to lead JCPenney.com for 4 years and work at Neiman Marcus and run their digital transformation for 4 years. And yeah, Steve, somewhere along the way, we bumped into each other at least a half a dozen times. So the Dallas retail community is not that big.
Fantastic.
and going under some turmoil at the moment.
Always.
Yeah. I guess an important question, not originally in the script, so to speak, is do you have a favorite barbecue place? Since you've been so much in Texas and Austin and Dallas, are you a barbecue fan at all?
Well, I'll go with the easy layup. Terry Black's never misses the mark. So if you're in Dallas, stop by there. You won't be disappointed.
By the way, we have some side bets as to whether Michael will bring up barbecue or AI or back on task.
That's the easy one, Michael. If you ever come, we'll take you to some of the more obscure places.
Let's get back, as Steve said, on task. Let's talk about Ulta. So what a phenomenal story. It's probably one of the most successful stories in retail. Take us through a little bit about the evolution of the brand as you've seen it. You were attracted to come to that brand and its current state and where you trade and just give folks a sense of the business, and particularly for those who are outside of the United States, our listeners.
Sure. Well, needless to say, when I had the opportunity to join, I jumped at the chance because of the reputation and story and success of the business. But it's about a 35-year-old company. Specialty retail, all beauty and wellness. We're now only in the U.S., but about to expand into both Mexico and the Middle East. And both of those are in progress, and we're really excited about those launches. And we'll be opening up at least 50, if not more, stores here in the next few years, still here in the U.S. with plenty of room to expand. So we really pride ourselves on being all things beauty, all in one place, and make sure we deliver on that promise every day.
Now, Josh, I want to get into the Ulta story a bit more and talk about some of the things that you're driving there. But maybe step back a little bit, because as you shared, you've worked in digital roles, in e-commerce, not only for quite a while now, but also at several different places. For the benefit of our audience, are there some key things that you've learned, or I'm sure there are key things. What are some of the key things you've learned working for more than 2 decades in the space? I guess, both from the perspective of what's maybe surprised you the most, but also what have been the most impactful learnings and the kinds of things you're applying today?
Yeah, I mean, the most surprising things, Steve, are probably the least surprising if you follow retail, which I know your listeners do, but like the 4 Ps still matter as much as ever. You've got to have great assortment for product. You've got to have sharp pricing, and certainly in these days, making sure that you can provide outsized value to the customer is humongous. Place, promotion, right? The 4 Ps still last, and anytime you lose sight of being completely on your A+ game on those 4 Ps, you see it. I don't know if that makes it surprising, but sometimes we get romanced or try to get into some other things that aren't quite as sexy as the 4 Ps. But I always I'm surprised about how those have lasted throughout the years. But, in modern times, especially in digital and e-commerce, there's a few other Ps that I would throw on top of those. So process is a big one. We have to move really quickly. So having streamlined processes, streamlined decision rights, making sure that you can go from 0 to 1 to 100 quickly is really important. And if you're trying to figure out how people work together, that gets really difficult. I'll call out participation as another one. That's been a big difference in the last 10 years and certainly in my career in e-commerce. Just the customer's participation in the retail journey now. So we have behavioral data, we have user-generated content. Certainly we can do a lot of experimentation. All those things now are so important, and it's how we sharpen our knives every day to make sure that we're providing the best experience we can. And then, as far as impact, Steve, it's all about the people, the team you build, the team that delivers every day, whether it's technical engineers or guest services representatives or site merchandisers or buyers. When you've got A+ people, you get A+ results.
I want to pull on that thread a little bit, Josh. For the kind of commercial success and market share growth that Ulta has seen, a lot has to go right. But if you could kind of distill that down to a couple of 3 things that really are essential to making the Ulta story complete, such a remarkable retailer, what would those be?
Sure. Well, I mentioned earlier, our mission is to be all things beauty all in one place. So our assortment, our brand partners, and the assortment that we carry of theirs is incredibly important. We want to make sure that anytime they come into our app or certainly walk into our store, that the brands and the products they see give them the selection that they deserve and the brands and the value prop that they expect. So that goes without saying, and I just can't reinforce that enough, Michael. But certainly here at Ulta, our loyalty program is something we pride ourselves on. 44 million members. We have amazing relationships with them, which means we have great data. And as we kind of turn our page and really focus on becoming what we call the destination for beauty enthusiasts for a lifetime, making sure that we requite their loyalty and the data that we have available to us with really great relevant experiences will become more and more important. And we're planning on tripling down on that. And then I can certainly, punctuate all that by just saying our culture here is unbelievable. I mean, since the day I walked in the door, the team we have, the enthusiasm that the people in the building have to make sure we're delivering great product, great value, and great experiences, and we'll work tirelessly and so collaboratively to do that is without reproach, and we get to take advantage of their passion every day.
Sometimes I frame these in table stakes versus differentiators. In the course of your career, you've worked for some amazing brands and done amazing work. Are those the things? Is it the people, the synergy of those that's the differentiator? I mean, having a great assortment, being there. I mean, more and more in a competitive business like beauty, that's table stakes. So are those the things that really make Ulta stand out?
They are, because those are the people who are ultimately, listen, we all have to make decisions and trade-offs, right? And those decisions are smarter when you have a great team and you have those people. And those trade-offs are a lot less painful when you have people who are collaborating and can deliver, right? You can take on more at once. You can experiment more often, and it's only through those teams that make a difference. And of course, that includes things like the structure of your organization. I talked about process flows. I talked about decision rights. So all those things, that scaffolding has to be there, but ultimately, those people are the ones that are delivering on all those vectors.
Now, when you were talking about some of the P's, I thought one of the P's you might lift up was personalization, and I partially say that because when we were on stage together, I guess last August or something, you talked about some of the specific ways, and you touched on this already a little bit, but I wondered if we could go deeper on how you are leveraging data and customer insight to drive your growth. It sounds like personalization is a big piece of that. And I think as part of, which maybe we'll get to in a minute or two, but part of kind of your company's new strategy, it sounds like personalization is one of the key platforms there. So could you just give our audience maybe a little bit more flavor for exactly what you're doing and I guess why you think it's so important?
Yeah, and this will give me a chance to hit the bingo card, Steve, on talking about AI for a minute too, right? It wouldn't be a retail podcast.
Right, we're calling it at minute 13. Where are we on the recording?
Yep. Personalization is a giant emphasis for us. It's been years in the making, and our loyalty program is really the bedrock for our personalization efforts and initiatives. Obviously, the foundations that you need are the ability to A, identify your customer, and B, know at least a little bit about them and hopefully a lot about them, right? But you really only do that in a meaningful way if they're willing to share that data with you and tell you about themselves. And our customers are willing to do that in lots of different ways. Virtual try-ons, transactions, surveys, et cetera. So we get to know a lot. So quite honestly, it's our obligation now to take advantage of both the data that we have, the relationships we have. And now what the AI does is make that easier than ever than to provide relevance to the customer, whether that's relevance in product and recommendations, whether it's relevance in offers, whether it's just making sure that you're knowing that things are going to work right for you and what solutions you're looking for, whether it's a skin solution or something you're trying to do with your hair or what have you. So it's huge for us. We've got some great partnerships, and we've even acquired some great technologies here that will help us do that. So our recent partnership with Adobe and their entire ecosystem, and certainly everything that they're investing in AI and agentic AI will be huge for us. And then some of the things that we've been able to acquire and then cultivate here with our conversational search, real-time product recommendations, and then our virtual try-on tools through our Glam Lab acquisition have been huge in helping us do that. And now we just want to make sure that every touch point, especially the digital touch points, are very relevant, or at least, Steve, not irrelevant to customers. And we're steering down the middle of things that we want to still say to our customer, but hopefully more and more often things that she wants to hear from us.
So I'm curious, as you think about this and you put some of these programs into motion, how you kind of test your way into it. But I'm also interested, and I guess I hear this a lot from people with so much change in technology, with so many, whether it's startups or bigger companies bringing new solutions to market. How do you sort through all that, and how do you know when to actually step on the gas, and go from that maybe proof of concept stage to something you want to scale out? Because I imagine you just have a huge portfolio of things you could do, but almost only so much time and energy and money to really drive a few of them forward. How do you figure that out?
Yeah, well, absolutely. I mean, you could walk the floor at any show or conference that I'm sure many of your listeners attend, and the options at our disposal are infinite, right? And they're all good ideas, right, Steve? But we only have time to work on the best ideas. So experimentation's a big part of it, right? But what you want to do first is make sure that you're picking the ones that are at the core of your mission, the core of your business purpose, and will resonate with your customers, right? So that's really some of the grounding principles we have. So if we hearken back to all things beauty, all in one place, how does it help us expand that mission? If we hearken back to being the destination for beauty enthusiasts for a lifetime, we want to make sure that we're focusing on bets that will help us grow lifetime value throughout a customer's journey with herself and her beauty through the decades. So those are the things that we try to gravitate to, as opposed to too many other shiny objects. But anything that helps us in those missions is what we're either investing in or partnering on.
Josh, we had the pleasure of having Dave Kimball on the pod a 3 years ago now, and you've got new leadership in place, and you've got a bit of a changing environment. Growth's a little hard to come by, both, I think, for everyone, perhaps even for Ulta in America. You touched on international expansion. Is that part of how you think about evolving your focus, or has that focus changed at all? Talk about that for a bit.
Yeah, so we've made some changes, and it's very exciting that we've got a new CEO, Keisha Steelman, who came in. She's been with the company for 10 years, and everyone here is super excited to have her leadership. She's making some really important changes throughout the organization and strategically. I won't belabor the details of all those, but very quickly we've recalibrated our structure and some of our focus, and we're all very excited about that. We talked about personalization. We talked about our digital experience, which will continue to be a focus, and we'll get even more focus. And I'm excited to get a chance to help shape and lead that vision. And then as far as just making sure that we are, truly all things beauty, we get to work on some new strategic initiatives like opening up our marketplace later this year that we just announced last week, and bringing even more assortment and category extensions and even maybe some new categories as we really focus on the wellness side of the equation that our customers are excited to shop with us on. So those are all things that are happening.
Well, it's a super exciting time. I wonder, before we let you go, first of all, whether there's anything we didn't talk about that you're maybe working on that you're excited about, but also maybe just quickly on the marketplace, because I did see that you guys announced that. And I wonder, particularly since you've been at some other retailers, I would say marketplaces have gotten kind of a mixed response from the market, where some retailers have had tremendous success, others not so much. So how did you guys think about getting into the marketplace world, and what do you think's different about what Ulta might be able to do compared to some retailers that maybe haven't quite as much success pulling it off?
Sure. I mean, Steve, I won't comment, much less pretend to be an expert on where other folks have maybe missed the mark or been disappointed, but ours will be a very curated marketplace. It is a closed marketplace, invitation only. And that's because we know we want to make sure that we're focusing on continuing to provide our customers all things beauty and wellness in one place. Mm-hmm. And in the world of beauty, there's just so many options and so many new solutions and new folks coming. We want a way to work with those brands. We honestly review thousands of brands a year here at Ulta, and we only get the opportunity to work with a few at a time. Sure. And we love those brands, and they will continue to be the lion's share of our assortment, especially in our stores and even online. But there are many other products and solutions and even categories out there that we know our customers are looking for when it comes to their beauty and their wellness journey. And we want to make sure that we get a chance to at least test them. But we plan on only bringing on the ones that we have high confidence that will have staying power.
That seems to make a ton of sense. Anything else before we let you go?
No, this has been great. I appreciate you guys having me on.
Well, we're very excited. Well, first of all, thanks for joining us. And we're very excited to see where Ulta Beauty heads in the future, particularly some of the international expansion. That sounds pretty exciting. So our listeners in Mexico and the Middle East can get ready. When do you know when the first set of stores will be opening?
We are planning on them opening later this year. We don't have a date yet, Steve. And if you don't mind me making one last plug, if there is anybody who's interested in selling on our marketplace, ulta.com/marketplace is the place to go and get more info.
All right. We should have gotten an affiliate marketing agreement in place before the show.
Happy to work that out with you.
This
all the barbecue you can eat.
It's all about monetization, right? That's what I hear anyway. So, well, again, thanks, Josh. We look forward to seeing you soon, and we really appreciate you joining Michael and myself on the Remarkable Retail Podcast, and we wish you lots of success this year.
Thanks.
Thanks for tuning in. New episodes of Season 10 are available each and every Tuesday, so be sure and tell all your friends in the retail industry all about us. And make sure and visit our newly refreshed YouTube channel for exclusive video and our new virtual store tours. If you liked our episode, please take a moment to give us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts.
And I'm Steve Dennis, strategic advisor, keynote speaker, and best-selling author of 2 books, Leaders Leap, Transforming Your Company at the Speed of Disruption, and Remarkable Retail, How to Win and Keep Customers in the Age of Disruption. You can learn more about me, my consulting, and keynote speaking at stephenpdennis.com.
And I'm Michael LeBlanc, consumer retail growth consultant and advisor, keynote speaker, and media entrepreneur. You can learn more about me on LinkedIn. Safe travels, everyone.